And joining us, two members of Congress, Democrat Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida and Republican Paul Ryan of Wisconsin. Thanks very much to both of you for coming in. Let me start with you, Congressman Ryan. This Pledge to America, you were obviously deeply involved in putting it all together. But look at the very sharp negative reaction from a prominent conservative, Erick Erickson. He's a CNN contributor from RedState.com. He says this: "It is a series of compromises and milquetoast rhetorical flourishes in search of unanimity among House Republicans because the House GOP does not have the fortitude to lead boldly in opposition to Barack Obama." Go ahead and respond to Erick Erickson, who says these are just words, but you don't deliver substance.
Okay, so I guess I'll put him down as a critic.
Yes.
So, first of all, Wolf, we think it's important that we don't make promises we know we can't keep in the next session. If we have the privilege of serving the majority, we're going to have divided government. So we don't want to go out there and promise pie-in-the-sky things that we know won't get signed into law because Barack Obama is going to be the president. What we want to do is declare what our principles are. More importantly, say that we're not going to be like the Republicans that got kicked out 4 years ago, big spending, earmarks, all of those things, and that these are the things we could do right now to get this country right on the right track. Cut spending, create jobs, clean up the way Congress works. This is not meant to be an exhaustive redo of the party platform or a complete comprehensive agenda. This is meant to be a current governing agenda to fix the problems that are right in front of us, knowing that if we do get the privilege of the majority, we will be in a divided government situation.
Well, what's wrong with any of that, Debbie Wasserman Schultz?
Well, what's wrong with it is that they've made a pledge today to the special interests rather than to America. And, I mean, what's particularly galling, Wolf, is that on September 23rd, the day that the Patients' Bill of Rights reforms actually could go into effect, and as a breast cancer survivor, I can tell you that that's particularly disturbing to me that, for example, someone like me is one job loss away from being dropped or denied coverage because of my pre-existing condition, yet the Republicans would repeal health care reform, make sure that insurance companies would be back in the driver's seat. That's part of their pledge to America. Their pledge to America also includes repealing Wall Street reform, putting Wall Street back in the driver's seat instead of focusing on balancing our policy between consumer protection and making sure that business can thrive. They also want to pledge to America we hold middle-class tax breaks hostage so we can give tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires that add $700 billion to the deficit.
Well, you went through 3 points. Let's go through those 3 points. Let's talk about, this is 6 months right now, Congressman Ryan. Health care reform has been enacted. A lot of folks are happy that their college-age family members, they're going to be able to stay, their kids, on the family plan until age 26. You want to repeal that. Why?
The chief actuary of this administration has already told us that this bill is not meeting what they've already said it would do. Bigger deficits, higher health care costs. The CBO is already telling us this thing is a massive deficit. It's not that we don't want to reform health care. Health care needed reforming. We don't want this bill that reforms health care by having a government takeover of health care. What this bill will do is make health care less accessible, lower quality, more expensive, and give us a massive deficit when we have huge deficits. Here's the problem, Wolf. The Democrats here, they didn't even do a budget this year for the first time since 1974. We have to get this spending under control. We got to create jobs. Raising taxes on successful small businesses is not going to create jobs. According to the CBO, it's going to cost us 1.2 million jobs. So obviously we have a different opinion on these things, as you can see.
Well, let's go through the tax cuts that the Bush administration implemented. They're going to expire, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, at the end of this year unless legislation is passed in both the House and the Senate. Looks like the Senate is punting till after the November 2nd midterms. The House is there going to be a vote on this between now and November 2nd in the House?
Well, we're still talking about when that vote will take place, but what we want to make sure, and the clear contrast between Democrats and Republicans here, is their pledge to special interests today came out with preserving tax breaks for the wealthiest individuals, for millionaires and billionaires, holding middle-class tax breaks hostage, and adding $700 billion to the deficit. They talk out of both sides of their face. On the one hand, they talk about cutting spending, but they ignore and treat tax cuts for the wealthiest individuals, adding $700 billion to the deficit, like it's not spending.
Well,
they are equivalent.
Let me ask Congressman Ryan to respond to that.
Deficit.
Because if the wealthiest, those making more than $250,000 a year, get to keep the same tax rate, as has been in business now since the Bush administration.
7 years.
Yeah, 35%, as opposed to going up to the Clinton administration's 39.6%. That will cost the American taxpayer $700 billion over the next 10 years. You want to cut the debt, the national debt. There's $700 billion, Congressman Ryan, right there.
Well, not only do I disagree with what Debbie just said, 41 Democrats in her own caucus disagree with what Debbie said. We have the votes to pass this if the Speaker would let this come up. Now, you mentioned a good point. Shouldn't we just raise taxes on rich people? You know who pays these taxes? These tax rates hit 50% of all small business income, about 900,000 small businesses. 70% of our jobs come from these small businesses. The CBO just put out a report saying if this happens, we could lose 1.2 million jobs. Here's the point. To get our fiscal situation under control, we need to do two things: grow the economy, create jobs, and cut spending. Raising taxes defeats those purposes, those objectives. We don't want to slow down this economy. We want to cut spending.
Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, a lot of economists say they agree with Congressman Ryan that if you raise taxes on those making $250,000 a year or more at a delicate moment in the economy right now, that could perhaps even trigger a double-dip recession.
Well, if the overwhelming majority of economists agree that the tax cuts that Mr. Ryan and his colleagues want to extend for the wealthiest Americans would do nothing to turn the economy around, that it's the middle-class tax breaks and for working families that we need to reenact, because most wealthy Americans don't use that windfall and put that money right back in the economy. They sit on it. They sit on it and sit on their investments, and it doesn't help at all. All it would do is add to the deficit. And I certainly agree, and Democrats agree, that we should be targeting our assistance when it comes to tax policy to small businesses, which is why the Republicans should have voted with us today on the Small Business Lending and Jobs bill. But unfortunately, they all voted against it. They have no interest in getting capital out into the hands of small business owners. They could have voted for that bill today and gotten that credit to be available. But instead, all they're focused on is victory, returning to the same tired old tax policy of the past. And the American people are going to reject it on November 2nd.
Are you just the party, Congressman Ryan, the party of no to whatever the Democrats raise? Even if these are issues, these are proposals that Republicans supported in the past.
Look at the thing we just put out today. These are a party of proactive ideas to get this country back on track, to replace government-run health care with patient-centered, consumer-directed health care, to get this debt and deficit under control, to create jobs in this country, to actually make members of Congress actually read the legislation they're voting on before they vote for it. These are common-sense solutions that are anchored in our founding principles. Look, going back to this tax cut issue, even the president's advisors, Peter Orszag, Mark Zandi, are telling us you should not be raising taxes at this moment. We put out a list of 314 economists yesterday saying, do not raise taxes at this precarious time in our economy. It is very left of center to be suggesting we should have these tax increases. Moderates, Democrats, and Republicans are saying we should not be raising these taxes.